Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. My name is Brandon, and today we are doing something a little bit different. We are going to be doing AFL 2023 predictions on the YouTube channel. And today I have two special guests with me, Jakson Bertoli first. How are you?
Good, mate. Thanks for having me back.
And back fresh off the Carlton preview is Callan Cummins. How are you, mate?
I'm good. I'm excited for this. I think we'll have a bit to chat about.
I'm excited as well. I think it's going to be fun.
Yeah,
Jacko, if you want to run down what we're going to do for this preview.
absolutely. So today we're going to go through pretty much everything AFL predictions wise. We're going to do a full ladder from 18 to 1, counting backwards. Then we're going to do a whole list of predictions that include the premiers, the runners up. We're going to do the Brownlow, the Coleman, Rising Star. We're going to give you a surprise All Australian. We're going to give you the a breakout player for this season. We're also going to give you the recruit of the year and a headline that you are guaranteed to see in 2023. If you're interested, that's just if you're interested in our three perspectives. If you want to see anyone else from the Inner Sanctum, we are going to have a full crystal ball prediction down below in the description of this YouTube video. So go check that out if you want to see everyone else. I'm ready, boys. Do you guys want to get into it?
Let's do it.
We're going to start with the wooden spooners. Bit of conjecture. We're all going in blind. We haven't seen anyone else's thoughts on this, so it's interesting to see. Callan, who have you got to win the spoon this season?
The spoon I've gone with Hawthorn. I A lot of people I've heard have put them a bit higher up the table, but they've lost O'Meara, they lost Mitchell, they lost Gunston. I just think they brought in Amon. I just don't think it sort of compensates. I think they'll drop further down the ladder, and I've got them for the spoon this year.
Absolutely, mate. I completely agree. I have them with my spoon as well. I just don't think they're going to be able to win enough contested ball. I don't think. I think it's going to be close. I don't think they're going to win zero games. I think they're going to win a few games, but I don't think they're going to win enough. Brando, who have you got?
I've gone a little bit different. I've gone with West Coast. I just think, look, we expect them to tumble last year, and they did so. They finished quite low on the ladder, but I just think I don't love the mix. Like they've got some great veteran players, they've got some decent young players, but there's nothing in between that makes it gel, and I think it's not going to be an easy season for them.
Absolutely. West Coast is an interesting one to have in having the wooden spoon there. I'm going to interested to see where Cal and I both have them placed. Before we go any further, I should give out this caveat as well. We are filming this before the official practice matches. They are set to start tomorrow, so we have not seen any of these practice matches as of yet. In 17th, I've got North Melbourne. I've got Alistair Clarkson's boys. I think he's going to help them, but I still think they've only had one preseason of that system, and I think it's going to take a little bit longer for that. Brando, who have you got there?
I've gone with the wooden spooner from you two, Hawthorn. Pretty much for the reasons that you guys both said. It's just they're a little bit off it. They've got some good young players, but it's going to take some time. So yeah, 17.
Callan, who have you got there?
For me, I've just swapped around with Brandon, and I've gone the West Coast Eagles. Pretty much exactly as he said. The Not so much a lack of depth. The top end talent is aging, but the kids that are coming in, they're good. They've got a good future building, but at the moment, I've got them in 7/8.
I can't lie, boys. I've got them a little bit higher than this, so it doesn't surprise me. But I may have just been sucked into that win on the weekend a bit too much.
It may have something
Uh,
to do with their past form as well, where you see them tumble and you expect them to take a leap back up the ladder. Maybe that's what you've sort of brought into your head there, but it's going to be
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's very much what it could be. As a Swans fan, it gives me a lot of pleasure to say that in 16th I have the GWS Giants. Um, they've got so much talent on that list. I just don't. It honestly, in saying this, I don't. It wouldn't surprise me if they finish much higher than 16th. I just think they're rebuilding and they'll be down there for a little while, lads. Who have you got, Callan?
I agree. I've got GWS in 16th. They've pretty much hit reset this year going under the new coach. But like you said, they've got good talent. Finn Callahan just signed an extension, so he's locking in the club for a couple more years, and he's a really promising player. They've got Josh Kelly, they've got Stephen Keely in their midfield, and it's a good team. But like you said, they've hit reset. I think it'll take a while for them to build back up.
Yeah, absolutely. Brando?
Believe it or not, we've hit our first treble. I've also got the GWS Giants. Yeah, it's similar reasons to Hawthorn and West Coast. Just the mix isn't right. They've got to go down before they come back up. And I think, yeah, it's going to be a tough season for GWS.
That's very good from us. I'd love to see a little tally on how many of these we absolutely nail through this recording. So that takes us through the bottom three, and I don't know about you guys. 15th for me wasn't too tough either. I think I've got a pretty solid bottom four. So I've got the Bombers coming in at 15th. Um, they're just, I don't see a lot of improvement. They started to improve last year, but I just think they're going to dip back down. There's a lot of teams from that lower part that I think have personally gotten better. And I think it's not through the Bombers being poor. I just don't think they've improved as much as other teams. Brando?
I've gone with North Melbourne. I think, like you said, that your bottom four is locked. I feel like mine's locked, and I know you don't have West Coast in yours, but that'll be interesting to see where they land, given you think they'll be improvers. But yeah, I think North Melbourne, obviously, Clarko's a massive improvement in the coaching ranks, and it's time for them to climb. Can't say they're going to climb too far, but I think 15th is a good step.
Absolutely. Callan?
I'm with Brendo again. I've got North Melbourne. I think they got two good picks. They got a lot of top heavy picks in the first round coming through. You got Shees and Woodlaw. But again, they're a really young team on the rise, like I said, with the Giants and Eagles, but I just don't see it happening this year. 15th for me.
Very nice. Moving into 14th, still sort of in that, starting to hit that mid-table area. Brando, who have you got for us there?
This one might be controversial because some people might have them higher, and I don't know where they'll land for you two, but I've gone with St Kilda. I think obviously Ross Lyon is a massive acquisition, but it's such a change in game plan, such a huge change. And I don't think they have the personnel to adapt to that quick enough. They've got some great young players and some good veterans at that as well. But I just think it'll take a while for them to adapt, and we could see them take a tumble, finish 14th around that bottom four area, and then back in the eight as soon as next year, maybe. But yeah, I've gone with St Kilda.
Very interesting. I think that will generate a bit of a stir, that one. Callan, who have you got in 14th?
I've got the Bombers in 14th. As you sort of said, they were another team on the rise. They'll creep up this year, but as we sort of said for the other teams, they won't win enough games. It's a young team, sort of towards the end of games. I think they'll fade out, and that's why I've got them in 14th.
Yeah, absolutely. In 14th is where I've got the Adelaide Crows. I love the addition of Isaac Rankin, but I still think it's that midfield that causes a lot of problems for me. Rory Sloane will come back this season, but that midfield is going to be led by Rory Laird and Sam Berry, who takes another leap this year. I just don't think it's going to be enough to win them games of footy. That brings us to 13. And Callan, if you want to kick us off in this one.
I have also gone Adelaide you had them 14th. I've gone one above 13th. I think Rory Laird will be even more influential this year. As you said, Sam Berry and Laird, they're tackling machines. They just absolutely love to hunt the ball, hunt the inside footy. So I think that can actually lift them a bit. Taylor Walker and Darcy Fogarty up forward. It's a really nice structured team. I think just down back, they've got Jordan Dawson, but down back, I feel like they're a little bit weaker, a little bit less experienced. So I'll put them 13th.
Absolutely. Brando?
I think Cal put it perfectly. I've gone with Adelaide as well. Their Ben talent, I think, is superb. Like we've mentioned all the names already that I had in my head. Jordan Dawson is unreal. Rory Laird is an absolute star. And then we've got guys like Sam Berry coming up in the midfield. Rory Sloane might be back. And then Taylor Walker seems to be getting better every year, which is unreal to say. But and then Darcy Fogarty next to him, who is improving every year. I think they've got a really good top end. And as they close the gap between their best and their worst, they'll definitely climb up the ladder. They're a team who I think could genuinely finish in that bottom section under the 9 to 11. But I think 13th is a safe call for Adelaide for sure.
Yeah, definitely. In 13th, I've got West Coast. I don't have them too much higher than you guys, but I think just looking at it now, I may have been tricked by their win on the weekend. I just love the look of the kids they've brought in. Elijah Hewitt looks great. We didn't even get to see Ruben Jinby, who could be in another level. Elliot Yo's back to fit. So is Dom Sheed. And that's a lot of their premiership stars who I think can really help drive that senior part of the list they were missing for most of last year. I don't think it's going to be a great season for them, but I think they're just going to miss that bottom little part of the ladder there. Into 12th, and Brando, if you want to kick us off.
I'm going with one that you have both already said, I believe, unless I've stuffed that up. I've gone with Essendon. I think they're at a point now where their mix looks really good to me. And I've mentioned the mix 100 times already, but you need to have a good mix between your low end talent and your top end talent. And I think they've got that. Their young stars are really good. I mentioned in the Essendon preview, I love the look of their forward line if it's at full flight. Um, they've just got all the pieces, I think, to start making that creep up. And they could finish close to the bottom four again if they need one more year, but I think it's definitely time for them to start showing the potential.
This is where I've put the Saints. I agree with Brando. I think it's going to take him a little while to adjust to Ross Lyon's structure. He's a coach that usually takes a season to get going. So I think it's a pretty good addition, like I referenced that Saints preview we did. But I think it's going to be a little bit of a process for that one. So I've got him in 12th for me. Cal?
Yeah, I agree. I've got the Saints in 12th, and Jacko, you basically took the words out of my mouth of how Ross Lyon's going to take a year to get involved. I just think the injuries at the start of the year, you've got Max King out for who knows how long, probably half the year, and Billings now's out for the first couple of months. So I just think they have a really slow start, and it'll be just too far to come back from.
As the Sanctum's resident Saints fan would say, the Saints have more forward half injuries than you can shake a stick at. Since we're going into 11th, and I took the words right out of your mouth there, Cal, I'll let you kick us off with 11th place.
11th, I feel like I look at now, I put them a bit low, but I'm sticking with it. I've got the Bulldogs. They made the finals last year by the skin of their teeth, and they added Rory Lobb. They did, and I just feel like there's too much tall forwards now. I just don't see how they're going to make it all work. Maybe they throw a couple in the back line, but I just don't see the improvement of the Dogs like I see some other teams jumping above them. So for that, I've got them in 11th.
Cal, that's pretty much where I've got the Bulldogs as well. I've got them in 11th. I don't think they're necessarily going to get worse, but I think a few of the other teams are just going to be better. Look, they made finals last year, but they really just sort of scraped in by the skin of their teeth. They, like Cal said, they've got so many tools, and I just don't see where the progression comes from in that list anymore. They've sort of been at the top of their game, and we didn't see much. So, unfortunately, that's what I've got. Brando, how about you?
The problem I had when making this ladder is that the top eight and then that 9, 10, 11 is so close. Like any of the teams I have in that bottom section of the eight could genuinely finish in this spot. But we have got our second treble of the video because I have gone the Bulldogs. I just think like the loss of Dunkley, firstly, is enormous. And their midfield is still unreal. But then I think once you go into the forward line and the back line, those are two areas of the field where they don't match up with the teams that I have above them, in my opinion. So I think that'll be their downfall, and I've got them 11th.
Very nice. It's good to see another treble from us. We're either all going to be very on the money this year, or we all might be out of a job. So now we're into the top 10 here. Brando, if you want to kick us off with your number 10.
I'm glad you've asked me to kick this off, Jakson. This may not go down well. When you look at what they did last season, I do not see them replicating it. I'm laughing, but I genuinely believe that we've seen this before where teams do what they do and they might take a tumble back down and come back up. I've got Collingwood in 10th. I don't see them being better than the 9 teams I've got above them. It's genuinely what I believe. They won so many games by the skin of their teeth last year. And I think you take a lot of those games away, not even all of them, take half of those games away, and they are pretty much in the position where I have them now. Like it's just, I don't see them replicating it. So I've got them 11th. Oh, 10th.
10th. Yeah, it's in 10th. I'm very glad I asked you to kick that off as well. For anyone who's watching and doesn't know, Brandon is a Callan supporter, so take your bias or not, but that's the truth there. Callan, who have you got in 10th?
I've gone with Gold Coast. I think they are a team on the rise, and they are almost there. They're almost there. I think it'll be another year or two, but they will be in the finals eventually. I just don't think it'll be this year.
Yeah, again, mate, you and I are on the same wavelength here. I've also got Gold Coast. I'd really love them to make finals. I really would. I'm just not sure this is the year. I think I trust a lot of the teams that I've got above them more than I trust the Gold Coast, and you've pretty much said everything else I needed to say. That takes us to 9. This is the team we've got just missing out on the 8. Probably one of the hardest places to pick on the ladder. I don't know about you guys, but it was certainly mine. And this where I've got Collingwood. I've also got a missing the eight. I just like Brando. I love the numbers, and statistically, what they did last season in those close games has never been replicated. What they did last season in close games has never been done. No team has won as many as they did, and then no team has. It's very rare that a team wins more close games and it loses and does it twice in a row. I don't think they're going to replicate that, so I've got them in ninth and missing the eight this season. Callan?
I've gone with Port Adelaide. Now, again, like Brendo, a Carlton supporter, I wanted to put Collingwood in ninth, but I feel like I saw enough of them to trust Collingwood more than I do Port Adelaide. Um, the young kids coming through are like unreal, Port Adelaide. I just don't think the older players are going to be at that consistent level again this year. I think they'll be like right there until round 24 it is now this year, but I just think they'll just about miss out. I've got them ninth.
Very good. Brando, who have you got missing out?
Oh, I haven't done that. I thought I did. Um, I've got the Gold Coast Suns as well. I just, I wanted to put him in because I want to see him make it,
Yeah.
but I just think they're just that far away. Like they've got some star players. Obviously, Ben King's coming back this year. That could be massive. Then you've got Took Miller in the midfield. He's arguably one of the Brownlow favourites. He's a superstar of the game. They're starting to get those pieces, and then the products that are around them are starting to rise to the occasion as well. And we're going to see a very special team in the future, but I think they're just 1 year away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my issue with the Gold Coast is as much as we talk about King coming back, the midfield mix of Jared Witts, Tuke Miller, Matt Real, and Noah Anderson only missed one game combined last year. So they had a
Scary.
reasonably good injury run. I'm just not sure
Mm.
how much we can trust that to happen again. Coming into our eight, so we're into finals. Everyone's playing in September here. We've left August behind. Brando, you want to kick us off with eighth spot?
I've gone with a team that has been mentioned previously. I've gone with Port Adelaide. My main reason for putting Port Adelaide in the eight because they were deplorable at the start of last year. That second half of the season, they were in some unreal form, and I don't think it's something that you can just write off as is what it is. Like they are a good football team, and I know obviously I've only got them just making it in, but I think they're not at that point yet where they start to drop off any further than what they were last year. I think they climb back in. Their top tier players are still unreal, and yeah, I think they've got what it takes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to jump in here because I also have Port Adelaide in my eighth spot. Like you said, you've pretty much took the words straight out of my mouth. They were 0-5. You didn't expect them to be 0-5, and I simply expect them to be better than that to start this season. I think that gets them into the eight for me. Cal?
I've gone with Collingwood in eighth. Like I said, I think I've seen enough from last year, almost the professionalism to close games out when they needed to. They're not going to win 11 straight games or whatever it was last year by less than a goal. That was just unreal. But I feel like if it happens again, they'll do it again. Not as frequently. I feel like they'll probably win half of the close games, which is enough for me to slide them into the eight.
If I could just jump in there, I think that's a really good point. Often getting into that eighth spot, the maturity is what it takes. And if they retain even a fraction of the maturity they had last year, then they can certainly scrape back in. Obviously, I put them 10th, so I don't believe what I'm saying. But yeah,
I
no,
do
I
believe what you're saying. I think you just let your Carlton bias talk a little bit, put him in 10th.
maybe you never know. We'll see. We'll see in September. But yeah, no, that maturity definitely could come into play for sure.
Absolutely. To kick off seventh, Brando, do you just want to go back to back and give us who you got in seven?
Jacko, I've gone with the Sydney Swans in seventh. It was a tough one putting them that low because I think they generally have a better list than maybe the four teams above them at least. But we saw what happened in that grand final, and oftentimes it can send a shock through a list. And I'm surprised that none of us put them out of the eight because there are a lot of people saying that they will drop out completely. But I just think their players are a little bit too good to miss out completely. Like it's such a great young list, and they might take a tumble for a bit, but yeah, I really like Sydney. I put them seventh though.
Yeah, absolutely. Callan?
I've gone with Freo. I don't think their list has gone backwards at all this year. I think It's actually probably gotten better. They only lost really Rory Lobb, but I feel like how good their youth is becoming, headlined by Brayshaw. I feel like I've got them going backwards this year, but I feel like their list is getting better. The list is getting better, but as sort of Brandon was saying, the teams above them have made the bigger jump. So I've got them in seventh for that.
In my 7 is where I've got the Demons.
Wow.
It's again like you, Brando. It was really tough to put them that low. I I don't know how the ruck combination works. It's a very tall system to run, and you've got to put one of them forward, and they're not neither of them are out and out key forwards. Or you play Max Gorn behind the ball, and he's an interceptor. He won't play men on me, and I think it just worries me a bit too much. I'm sure we'll get a month into the season, and this is going to age terribly. But for me, I've just got him in 7th.
And I know we got 6 to go, but it's truly a mark of how even this competition is this year.
Yeah,
Like, it might be
Oh,
the most even I've ever seen. Putting a team like Melbourne in 7th and saying I don't feel comfortable putting them there, but I had to
absolutely.
because the 6 teams above them,
yeah.
and even me with Sydney, like it's unreal how even this is.
You talk about Sydney and moving into the top 6. That's where I've got them. It hurts to put them down that low. Um, I agree with a lot of the things you said, Brando. I think they're going to make the finals. I don't. A lot of those times with those grand finals, the teams that get beaten, you see their experienced teams. They're getting older. They're in their peak, and I think Sydney are too young for that. I think they've still got a lot to go. But speaking about that youth, I'm worried about how they start the season for mine. We run up against Gold Coast and Hawthorn, two teams we typically struggle against. And I think if we don't start well, that could cause a roll on effect. And that's why I don't have them much higher. Cal, who do you have in 6?
I've also got Sydney. I feel like, yeah, the grand final will have sort of early season repercussions being such a young list, but I feel like, as Brandon was saying, they're too good to be that poor for so long. I feel like they'll start the year around that bottom end or top end of the bottom 10, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But I think they'll rebound in the second half of the year, and I've got them in 6th.
Yeah, absolutely. Brando?
I've gone with another one that I didn't like putting that low, and I had this team in my top 4 for a while, and they've ended up dropping to 6th, and it's Richmond. I just, again, much like with Sydney, I feel like the teams above them are just that little bit better, and the acquisitions of Hopper and Taranto are unreal. But yeah, I don't. I think their defense is the downfall for me. It's just lacking something. But I mean, Tom Lynch up forward is unbelievable. Obviously, Jason Castagna has retired, but they've got some good small forwards, and their midfield is insane. So, could be off the mark, but I've landed in 6th for Richmond.
Absolutely. Going into 5th now. Cal, who do you have there?
I've got Carlton in 5th, which goes against what I said in the Carlton ladder, so the season preview. Sorry, I said I had him 6th, but what I saw in the first preseason game, I've swapped Carlton and Sydney around, which means I've got Carlton and Collingwood in the first final. Which, if that happens, who knows what is going to result of that? But I think the Blues, they've got everything they need for a premiership team. I just don't think they've got the finals experience to, and sort of the back end of the season experience to sort of push themselves up. But they have a premiership quality team. They just need to play like one.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think you need to be too worried about what you said in the previews. I think I did 7 of them, and I don't remember where I placed anyone. Brando, who do you have in 5th spot there?
I stuck with my preview prediction for Carlton, and I went with 5th. Echoing everything Carl just said, I think Carlton have what it takes list wise to do some damage, but they just have to show it. And I know that's simple to say, but they just weren't showing it at the end of last year, and that's why we dropped out of the 8. And I think once we can have that impact in those tough, tight situations, then I think that's when we'll make that climb up into the top 4. But I think 5th is a fair assessment.
Very good from you two Carlton supporters. 5th is where I have the Dockers. I've got them being around the mark of last year. I really like the Luke Jakson pickup. I think he's going to be really good for them this season. We've seen out of the Freo camp, he's been playing everywhere. I think he's just a bit more mobile for me than the two Melbourne ruckmans, which is why I'm not too worried about that setup. And like Cal said earlier, Andrew Brayshaw, Caleb Sarong for me, I think are both incredible footballers, and they're just going to keep them back to fifth. So if I'm correct, we are into the top four. The big teams here. Brando, if you want to start us off for this one.
Glad you started off with me because I'll follow on from exactly what you just said about Fremantle and apply it to fourth position because I think they're ready to make that impact. And again, much like with Richmond having them sixth and having had them in the top four, I had Freo as low as seventh. But on second thought, I just look at that team and I think the progression last year was outstanding. And I think they can go even further this year. And you look at guys like you mentioned, Andrew Brayshaw, Caleb Sarong, Luke Jackson's been added now. I love some of the players in their back line. Obviously, Alex Pearce is there, the new captain. Hayden Young, guys like Heath Chapman, I love. Guys that fly under the radar. They have so many good players, and I think it'll serve them well come finals time. Got them fourth.
If I have a worry about that, you mentioned a lot of players there and not one in their front half, which I think is their real worry. If they're
I could mention a couple. I could mention a couple if you want. I could come in there.
If they're going to come up this high, they need to sort of capitalize on that scoreboard when they're getting so many entries.
Well, the question is, just before you go on, does Luke Jackson play in that front half? Because they have got Sean Darcy in the ruck.
I think he definitely starts.
And then the question is, can he impact on the scoreboard? And that's stuff that we will see, not as much as they would want playing him at full forward. Yeah. So I think that's something we'll see in due course. But if Luke Jackson can become that forward presence,
yeah,
oh my God.
Very good. Cal, who do you have in fourth spot there?
Fourth, I've got the Tigers. I feel like what I saw in the back half of last year is enough. And the recruits they got this year, Taranto and Hopper, like they are serious players. They're not getting any worse, Richmond. They've been so good for so long. You'd think they would start dropping off. A little bit of a decline last year. I've got them bouncing back this year. I've got them in fourth, and their midfield's now scary. Like it is a scary midfield.
I completely agree with what you said there. I've got Carlton at fourth. I think Michael Voss in the same way as Ross Lyon. I think it might just take a year to fully set in what his game plan is, especially with that contested style and the sort of crash and bash style. It's easy to sort of get a few injuries like you did last year as you're getting used to it. I think they'll keep people on the park more this season. You've got two Coleman medal winners in that forward half. You've got Jacob Wiedering at the back end. And that midfield is just phenomenal. So I think they're going to do more than enough to secure top four this year. That wraps up our four spot. Cal, who do you have in third?
Third, I've got the reigning premiers, Geelong. Everyone says Geelong are going to, this is the year they'll drop off. They'll finally drop down the ladder this year. First to third is not really a drop off. I still see them being one of the dominant teams all year. There's no real fault at Geelong. They're an aging team, but they've brought in Bose, Tanner Bruin. They're bringing in the kids that are actually going to slide into their 22 straight away. They're not really getting older as such. It's just the veterans that they've got, they're still doing stupidly good things. So, but they're third for me.
Absolutely. Third is where I've got most people's premiership favourites. I've got the Brisbane Lions sitting in my 3 spot. I don't know what it is about Brisbane. I've never been a believer, and why I'm objectively probably looking at this, and this is going to be wrong. I just don't know what it does this year. I watched them in that practice match live against Sydney, and they looked clinical. Jack Gunston was great forward. Will Ashcroft was phenomenal in that midfield. He fit straight in. So was Josh Dunkley. But when we've got Sydney sort of at 6, and they were 2 points behind with only 14 of their grand final team playing. So I think it's going to give some time. They're going to be really good and they're going to go deep into September. But I think just some of that, regular season form is going to see them in third. Brando?
I've gone with the Melbourne Demons. It's such a tough one to place. And, a lot of it will be down to what you mentioned before, Jacko. Does that ruck combination work out? I still think their forward line isn't up to scratch, and that will have a massive impact as well. But you look at that midfield and that back line and how balanced they look across those areas, and I just can't see them dropping that far yet. I still think they're as big a contender as anyone. So, yeah, Melbourne in third.
Absolutely. So if I'm correct here, we cannot get another a triple. We've had two for the video, and that's all we're going to get. Cal, who do you have in second spot?
In second, I've got the D's. I think they've been a top team for a few years now. They're not going backwards like the Cats are. Petrarca and Oliver as a midfield duo are they're flawless. Like what one sort of is weak in, the other just compensates beautifully. So the D's and their backline as well, I might add, is just as well another level of phenomenal. You got May and Lever back there. Yeah, second for me is just a no-brainer.
Absolutely agree with everything you just said there, mate. Brando?
Going with the Premiers, Geelong. Again, I've been one of those guys in the last 2-3 years that has said every year, Geelong's time to slide, Geelong's time to slide. But I just can't see it now. Not after what they did last year. And, some of the young players that are coming up as well, you've got the likes of Sam de Koning, a few others. It just looks so good. And I don't think they're ready to drop off anytime soon. It will probably come in the next couple of years, but not now.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I completely agree. Geelong is where I've got second is where I've got Geelong. Sorry. Agree exactly with Brando. I was someone, even as much as Easter last year when they started, Paulie said, well, this is the year they're finally out. And that came back to bite me on grand final day. But they were so, I can't put them out of the top two. They were clinical. They were incredible last year. They know how to manage players, which I think is the key part of their season. And then you bring, we've already mentioned all their ins, but Jai Clark, that young draftee as well. I think they're going to be great again. That leaves us with the minor premiers, correct? I haven't missed anyone.
Jacko, unless I've missed something here, is your number one quite a shock?
Well. I was thinking this as well.
Because I don't think I've heard it yet.
I definitely have already said Brisbane, who you guys have.
There's a name I haven't heard yet.
How about we start with Jacko, just so we can get it out of the way?
Please do.
I am a huge fan of how the Richmond Tigers have built their list. I am an absolutely massive fan of Jacob Hopper and of Tim Taranto. I think they're both contested beasts. Taranto is a great forward half player. What they do is release Dusty to play full-time forward once again. Shea Bolton is one of the best players in the league when he's on. I don't think they set a foot wrong this summer. I'm a big stats guy, and Taranto and Hopper improved their chances by such a large percentage. And for me, they were always the number one. I wasn't straying from that. So if Brando wants to kick us off with your picks.
Yeah, I will in a sec, but I will say we built that up as a shock, and I know I did put Richmond sixth, but I almost had them in the top four, and I do think it's a fair shout. I mean, they could finish anywhere.
Yeah,
they could be unreal again. But
saying with me having them one, I completely agree with you putting them six. This top six, I think we've all agreed, is such anyone can finish anywhere. But yeah, Brando, if you wanna start off here.
I've gone with the Brisbane Lions, and it could be a risky call because notoriously their form away at points is not good. But I think if they clean up that away form, and I expect them to, because I think this team now is the perfect balance. They've got stars everywhere. They've got good role players. If they fix up that away form, they're definitely going to finish top, and we'll talk about premiers and runners up and whatnot later. But yeah, I think Brisbane are ready.
Okay. Do you have anything to add to that one?
Absolutely not. I've got Brisbane at one as well. I just think what they added this year was on top of what was already a good list. Their finals sort of experience shows that they're maybe not ready for the deep end of September, but the list they've got 11 games, 12 games maybe it is, in Brisbane this year. It's hard to beat them up there. That's probably 12 wins at least on the board. They'll take a couple of interstate games as well, and I think it'll be enough for top spot.
Yeah, and on that point as well, with finals, just to cut in, Jacko, sorry. When we talk about their late September form and how they've traditionally not lived up to expectation, maybe that bodes well for them in the sense that they have that experience now of losing so many prelims and semi-finals and not having that culmination. And I think we could definitely see it this year if they're ready to turn the tide.
And that wraps up the latter portion of this video. You should be seeing three ladders on the screen now as a little recap of who we've picked. You've got two Brisbane minor premiers, and you've got Richmond Tigers for mine. And then Cal and I have both agreed with Hawthorn as your wooden spooners, whereas Brando's gone with West Coast. Not too many surprises, I don't think. Off the top of my head, we've agreed on two positions, and there were a lot of positions in there where two of us had the same picks. So I don't know about you guys, but I think we've done pretty well to sort of be around the mark together.
For sure.
And we'll get into sort of our awards section now. I will pass off to Brando if you want to take this one. And we'll
All
just
right.
sort of, I guess, kind of rapid fire and run through what we've got here.
So we'll start at the bottom. We'll go with the headline you'll see at some point in 2023. Jacko, you want to start us off with that one?
Yeah, thanks, Brando. I took me a little while to come up with this one, but what I've gone with is Master Teacher's Apprentice a Few Tricks. North Melbourne overcome Hawthorn. I just think North Melbourne are the better list at the moment. I think there's going to be a little bit of spite in that one, and that's what we're going to see.
I'm looking forward to that game for sure. I think it could be a very interesting one. Cal, who have you, or what have you got rather, for the headline you'll see?
I've sort of focused on Suns heartbreak club's first final campaign, so close yet so far. They play Carlton and Sydney in the last month of the year. I feel like they'll be pretty much percentage, if not in the 8, heading into those last few games. And I feel like they'll just slip out in the last couple of games.
Yeah, fair enough. I've gone an interesting one, and this could come back to bite me, but I've gone with here to stay. Dockers dismantle the Bulldogs to make it 6-0 for the year. I think they're going to start off massively. And, you look at their fixture, they don't really have any of those top end teams in the first 6 games. They got Brisbane in round 7, which I think will be their first loss. But I think Freo are going to be a contender early on, and they will probably be top of the ladder after round 6. And while I've got them 4th, which means they will slide slightly, I think they're a contender for sure. So we'll go on to the next one. Set for a breakout season. Which player, Cal, you can go first. Who's breaking out this year?
Despite having him in last, I've gone towards the Hawks, and I've gone with Finn McGuinness. He's sort of been the tagger in the back half of the year, but I feel like sort of what Jack Steele did. He was a tagger and then became his own player in his own right. I feel like he's had a couple of years in the system to get himself physically right in that midfield role. And I feel like with a couple of omissions from the side like O'Meara and Mitchell, I feel like McGuinness can really step up and take a good lead this year.
Jacko, who have you got?
I've gone with my boy. We mentioned him. He got mentioned earlier in this podcast. I've got Finn Callan. I love the look of this kid. I loved him when he was drafted. Gutted to see him go to GWS. They've got the midfield spots there. Tom Green's going to be one to jump in. I think Finn gets the other one. I think he has a really big year.
Yeah, that's fair. Couple of Finns there. I don't have a Finn. However, I do have Elijah Hollands. Plagued with injury early in his career, and he may not get those inside midfield minutes, but you mentioned before, Jacko, Gold Coast have an unreal injury record, and if one of those players drops out, he could be one of the players who sees more inside time, and he's got all the elements. So if we see a lot of him this year, I think he could do some damage for the Gold Coast Suns. So with that, we will move on to recruit of the year. A lot of players move teams. Jacko, you can go first. Who's your recruit of the year?
It should have no surprise after my how I spoke about Richmond before, but I've got Timmy Taranto. I think he's just going to do so much for that team. They've really lacked a consistent 25 plus and a goal kicker in that midfield, and I think that's exactly what he brings. And he's going to help them win a flag. Not to spoil something that I say later, he's going to help them do a minor premiership.
I wonder. Cal, who have you got recruit of the year?
I've gone for Blake Acres. Perhaps there's a little bit of bias in me, but I feel like a 3rd round pick for maybe not an A-class winger, but a very good winger and a pure winger. They're hard to find in the league. So a 3rd round pick for that, for me, is great value.
And they filled the need as well. That was the biggest thing. Carlton needed wingers, and we've turned a weakness into arguably a strength. But I've gone different, so glad we've all gone different because we can create some content out of this. I've gone with Josh Dunkley. I've gone with Josh Dunkley. Superb player. Obviously, he was the best and fairest at the Bulldogs last year. He's walking into one of the best sides in the league, and he's going to improve them. As I said, I have him first, and I think he'll be a big reason for that. Can kick goals, big body midfielder. He can get in and under, get disposals. He's got it all, and I think he could arguably be one of the best players in the league this year, let alone recruit of the year. So
Very good pick.
yeah, Josh Dunkley. We'll move on to surprise All Australian. Now this could be interesting. Jacko, you can go first. Who have you got?
So I do have two prepared. If you won't accept the first one, so feel free to shut me down. I just think there's a lot of availability for this position in the All Australian team this season. Neither Grundy or Gawn are going to be able to get in. They're going to take minutes off each other. So I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to get into that All Australian team. And I've got Rowan Marshall with his first blazer.
I'd almost accept it because I think
it's borderline. It's borderline.
Even above Marshall and like even between Grundy and Gawn and Marshall, there are players who you'd expect to get in before him. So I will accept that.
Yeah, as just in case, my other one was Hayden Young off that halfback. So, but I'll stick with Rowan Marshall, my boy for this year.
Well, on that point, I will jump in because I've gone with Hayden Young. He's just, I love him as a player so much, and obviously halfback there are some unreal halfbacks. But if Freo improve the way I expect them to, I think he's probably going to be their best halfbackman. And yeah, he's got it all. I genuinely believe that, and this could be the season that he kicks it up a notch and makes the Australian team. Cal, who you got?
I went for a very competitive midfield role in this All Australian team. You saw the signs of it last year. I feel like Chad Warner is ready for an even bigger year. I can see Jackson's quite happy with that one.
I'd love if Chad had got a blazer at the end of this season.
I feel like
I love the pick. I love the pick
I
so
think he
much.
can do it again. He was unbelievable with his growth last year. And the other one I put on the side, this is like extremely out there, but Billy wants Will Ashcroft to be a first-year All-Australian. That would be unbelievable. And from talks, it sounds like he's got maybe the potential to do it, but the midfield in the Australians.
People wanted Nick Dacos as an
exactly right. But I feel like the midfield is going to be stupidly hard to break into. But if either of those two make it, I feel like it'll be great.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Will Ashcroft, and I can gather what your pick for this one is going to be, Cal. So we will go with you first. Rising star, who have you got?
Yeah, Will Ashcroft for me. I don't think it'll differ for either of us. He probably was the best player coming out of the draft class last year. There's no real debate for it. He's absolute freak. Jacko?
I've got the same thing. I almost wanted to go with someone different, just risk injuries, or if Aaron Cadman has a phenomenal year, I can see a world where he wins it over Ashcroft. But Ashcroft is he's that guy for a reason. I've got Ashcroft as well.
Yeah, like you said, Cadman, you never know. Sheasel looked brilliant in that first practice game, and I wouldn't be surprised if he makes a case for it, but it's Ashcroft. And you said there'd be no more trebles this video, but we've got another one. He just looks superb. And, you look at guys like Walsh, how he was in his first year, Dacos last year, I think he's going to be at that level. And it's going to be amazing to see. So, yeah, Will Ashcroft for me. Moving on, Coleman medal. It's a big one. Jacko, we'll start with you. Who have you got?
I have Tom Lynch. I think he was great last year. If he didn't have that hamstring injury, I reckon he could have made a genuine case at that Coleman medal. I think with the delivery from this midfield now that he's going to get, that midfield's going to be better than it was last year. He's going to have so many more opportunities to have shots on goal. I think he's going to kick those shots at goal, and I'm pretty comfortable with picking Tommy Lynch this season.
Cal, who have you got?
I wanted to go someone that's one in the past. I wanted to go like Harry Mackay, Charlie Curnow. I wanted to say Jeremy Cameron, but I thought Tom Hawkins might take a few off him. So I've gone a bit out there. I've gone Ben King. I feel like first year back, I feel like he could be quite influential. He's got Mubby or Chol next to him, but I feel like Ben King, first year back, he's going to stun the league.
I like it. I really do. And like you said, he's got Marby Chol next to him, but he's the target. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I've also gone Tom Lynch. Like you said, Jacko, the delivery is going to be unreal. He missed games last year, and arguably if he didn't miss those games, he would have been Coleman medals last year. So I expect him to light up the league. And obviously there's guys like Charlie, Harry, but Tom Hawkins, Jeremy Cameron. There's so many good forwards, but I think Tom Lynch might just be that level above this year. So
Yeah.
that's who I'm going with. And the next one is a big award, traditionally a midfielder's award, you might say, in the last few years. Brownlow medal. Jacko, you can go first. Who have you got?
I've had a last minute change here. I've had a player. It was tough for me to think of the player that I wrote down, but even after Cal has just gone Ben King there, he's inspired me to go with what my heart really wants to see. Jeremy Cameron was the best player in the league last year. The Brownlow was awarded to the best player in the league. I want him to win it this season.
Wow.
I would
Wow.
love that. I would love that. And I know
It
I
was
opened by saying it's traditionally a midfielder
Yeah.
award, but that's why I said traditionally because it shouldn't be.
yeah.
I love it.
I think he's a man that's capable of kicking 3 goals and getting 20 disposals in any game that he wants to. He gets so high up the field. He has an unbelievable work rate. He has an unbelievable tank. And he's just an incredible footballer. I stand by that he was the best player last year. And I can't see any reason why he'd be any worse this season.
Very fair. Cal, who have you got?
I have gone for a midfielder, sort of to ruin the high there. I've gone for Clayton Oliver. I sort of touched on him, talking about the Demons, how him and Petrarca can just go hand in hand. I feel like Oliver, it was damaging last year. I feel like he just does it again, but gets a bit more recognition. That's sort of simply how I put that. I feel like I want to say someone's going to tie with him, but I just don't really see it happening. I've got Oliver.
Um, if you have watched the Carlton preview, you may have seen me say this already, and I am sticking with the call. And I held back on the Carlton calls in this section just for this one. I genuinely believe Patrick Cripps is going to win it again. I think when you look at where we finished last year, the amount of games we won, and this is provided he stays fit because knock wood, you never know,
And doesn't get suspended.
and doesn't get suspended. But I just think I don't have words for how good of a player Patrick Cripps is, and I think if we make the jump that everyone is expecting us to make, and I said this in the preview, go back and watch it if you want to hear it. But yeah, I think he will ride that wave and he will get just that little bit better. And I genuinely think he's going to win it again. So Paddy Cripps for me.
While you've touched on that, if I can just jump in, if you've missed any of the AFL previews on the Inner Sanctum, they just finished up last week. All 18 are out. We've done one for every club. Go back and watch them. They're well worth your time. I know the ones I were involved with were incredible, and so were these two boys. So definitely go back and check those out.
100%. We've got some great contributors here, and you won't be wasting your time watching those. So with that, we are at the grand final, and I think we will start off with runners up. And
Do we want to
Cal,
speak about runners up at a time, or does each person want to go and speak about their grand final?
On grand final. I don't mind grand
we could
final.
go with the grand final.
Cal wants to start us off there.
All right.
Cal, go ahead.
Losing the grand final. I have got Geelong. I think they have the experience now. They're like who I've got with my other grand finalists. This might give it away. The back end of September, they've struggled in the past, but last year, Geelong put that all aside. They damaged anyone who they played. I feel like they'll fall one step short this year, to Brisbane. I think Brisbane, they'll top the ladder. I feel like they will win the premiership. They've got the list to do it. They've had the list to do it for the past few years, but I finally think this time they will put those September sort of woes aside, and I feel like they'll finally get their flag.
So my grand final, I have got a rivalry that I think's formed over the last few years. I have Brisbane losing this one. They're such a good team. I've done this with my top 8, and I've gone through and done a little finals bracket. So they've had a good run in the finals. What does it for me is back-to-back games at the MCG. I think it's my questions on their performance at the MCG, and if they can win a big prelim there. It's just the back-to-back game. I'm not sure how they go, especially against Richmond, who I have winning the flag. I love the games between these two sides. I think Richmond is just going to be so strong this year, and I'm genuinely worried about what they could be over the next few years again. I feel like we just came out of a dynasty and they've just loaded straight back up. So Richmond premiers with the Brisbane runners up for mine.
Yeah, I love the pick. Obviously, I did put Richmond six, and we talked about this, but I do love the pick. I think they're as big a chance as anyone. Obviously, week one, I've got Geelong and Melbourne playing each other in that first game. A lot of what I'm about to say could ride on that, and the winner of that game. My runner-up, I've gone with Melbourne. I just think the heartbreak that they suffered last year, going out in straight sets, is not something that their fans, their players, the club would expect to happen again. And I think it's something that they definitely turn around. Um, and with that being said, I think the team that beats them in the grand final is Brisbane, which is a bit ironic because Brisbane are a team that beat them at the MCG in the finals. But I just think Brisbane are, like I mentioned it when we put them first. Carl just mentioned it. They're ready. They're here to play. And you look at the acquisition of Dunkley, the development of the players around him. That midfield is outstanding. The forward line, they've got some great tall forwards. Charlie Cameron is a superstar. Back line is coming along really well. They've just got all the elements, and I think I could really see them dominating this year. So Brisbane for me.
Absolutely. Well, that I love both of those picks. I completely understand the Brisbane picks. If that wraps up our video for today, we've gone through everything. Hopefully, you've enjoyed it. Thank you for watching another video at on the Inner Sanctum's YouTube channel. If you want to see any more predictions, like I said at the start of the video, there is an article in the description which has a lot of the other Inner Sanctum contributors and their predictions. They're going to have their ladders 1 through 8, so just the finalists and all the same award predictions that we've picked. Thank you once again. Thank you, Cal, for joining us.
Not away. Cheers.
And to Brando for coming back once again.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
And we'll see you next time on the Inner Sanctum's YouTube channel. Thanks.